Welcome to the July 2023 edition of Hunt Camp Mail. I want to start off by saying, Happy birthday, America. I hope everybody got the tags that they put in for this year. I was lucky enough to draw a good tag here in the state of California for once, and I got an out-of-state tag this year, so I can't wait to fall hunting. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to bird hunting this fall because I'm just seeing a lot of quail, doves, turkeys, even a couple of chukar out there running around. I think this wet winter and spring really did the bird populations and the mammal populations a lot of good this year. This is usually the time of year where I transition over to fly fishing in the rivers, but unfortunately, last winter was just so extreme that every major river in the west is just totally blown out right now. But I have been able to fish some of the smaller creeks and streams, which actually benefit a lot from these conditions. I usually do some multi-day backpacking trips where I fish the backcountry this time of year, but the high mountain passes and trails are just completely snowed out now, and even at the end of July here, all the high mountain lakes above 11,000 feet are still frozen, which is a very weird thing here. And much of the high Sierras, I've heard, have been just devastated by countless avalanches up there. So I have to see that. But what a year, man. I got a lot of good letters this month. And thank goodness I won't be using the BS button this month. So let's get to July's mail. Our first letter is from Frank in Washington. Frank wrote, I'm a retired officer from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. The state of Washington has a large hunting and fishing population, but very few officers in the field enforcing the law. The politicians in Washington love to give lip service to protecting wildlife, but when it comes time to fund it, we always get left out. Because our resources were spread so thin, we had to pick our battles. When I arrested an individual or wrote a citation, I was 100% sure that I was in the right and it would hold up in court. Billy's letter in your last Hunt Camp Mail reminded me of most of the poachers I've dealt with in my career. No matter how illegal the behavior or how many lies they get caught in, they always saw themselves as victims. Thank you for calling Billy out publicly. It's hunters and anglers like you that made my job bearable. It's a great letter. And I want to thank you for the letter, Billy, and for your service as well. Out of all the law enforcement careers in this country, I personally believe that game wardens are the most underappreciated and underpaid of them all. The good deeds of a game warden never make the news and never get accounted for when people address our great system of wildlife management in this country. And a lot of people who live in the city don't even know that game wardens exist. But as you know, 99% of hunters and anglers support you and will have your back if you need us. We know that in addition to wildlife management, you guys are dealing with drug cartels, human trafficking, OHV activity, and search and rescue operations. In many areas, game wardens are the closest law enforcement, and the local community depends on them. In the same way that 99% of hunters out there obey fish and game laws, I think that 99% of game wardens out there are fair when they enforce the law. Guys like Billy are a real black eye to the hunting community, in my opinion, and I'm glad the local game wardens over there in Texas are dealing with them. Yeah, Billy. And our next letter is from Lucas in Germany. Lucas wrote, I just returned from hunting in Namibia for plains game. I brought my Mauser R8 and had to complete my hunt with the guide's Winchester 30-06. My Schmidt & Bender 2.5 to 10 by 50 broke internally and would not hold zero. Lucky for me, the guide's Winchester and old Leupold scope did good, and I was able to shoot 10 animals. What do you think about this top-end Schmidt & Bender scope breaking during my hunt? Honestly, it doesn't surprise me at all. Scopes are just machines with sensitive parts and fragile glass optics inside of them, lenses. They can all break or malfunction, and no scope is going to be immune to that. Smith and Bender makes fantastic high quality optics, but in the end, nothing is indestructible, and no quality control process is ever going to be 100%. Until Weaver came out with the K series of scopes, nobody even trusted scopes to make it through a hunting season. Modern premium scopes like we have today have just become so reliable that we sometimes forget that they're fragile machines that can still break or malfunction. Maybe we trust them a little bit too much. I always recommend that you buy high-end optics to minimize the chances of these failures, but I'm also smart enough to know that you need a plan B in case they do fail. For a dangerous game hunt, my plan B might be my backup iron sights or maybe a spare red dot to put on. For a plains game hunt, maybe I'll take a spare scope that I zeroed into that gun, or taking two guns on your safari in one case is also a good option that would have solved your problem on your hunt. Our next letter is from Stephen from Washington State. Stephen wrote, I've been a fan and subscriber of your channel for 3 years now. I like your hunt camp mail videos the best. When you lost your son in Montana a couple years ago, I was sad for you, but I really couldn't relate to your situation. Unfortunately, now I can relate to you. Last week, my 17-year-old son lost his life in a vehicle accident similar to your son. And I'm sorry, Steve. You seemed so calm and focused in your videos after that event, even though I could clearly see the sadness in your eyes. But within a year, I could see your attitude change and a sense of happiness finally return. I'm in a state of total shock right now. Everyone around me is falling apart, and my wife and daughter are paralyzed by sadness. Now my mother is having a heart issue, probably related to my son's death. From grieving father to grieving father, do you have any advice for me? Oh man. Stephen, you're going to get through this. But first, you need to accept that no amount of pity, sadness, or self-loathing is going to make you feel better or benefit your family. And don't forget that. Your family is just stricken with grief right now, and mine was too. But as a father, it's our job to be really strong during a time of crisis. The role of a father in a family is sacrifice, and we regularly sacrifice for our family. Now your family needs you to make the biggest sacrifice of all, to push all of your emotions aside and continue living life for them. If you go to get help or counseling, a psychiatrist will tell you to get years of counseling and therapy to get past your grief, but I advise you not to do that right now. Get all of that grief that you have right now, shove it into a box, and lock it away for now. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I'm just telling you, you need to take that grief out of you and you need to lock it away for now. When my son died, I had to deal with the highway patrol, the coroner, the funeral home, the death certificate, his bills, his belongings, his funeral services, and I had to give everyone around me a shoulder to cry on. The night after my son died, I was on the phone with people who needed organ transplants. There's really important business that you need to handle right now, for your family. And you need a really clear head to do it. You need to be thinking. You need to take care of business for your family right now. You just don't have time to be paralyzed by sadness or let your family fall apart on you. As men, I think that we're biologically made to deal with grief. Men are supposed to be the emotional rock that forms the foundation of a family. And your family is going to need you for stability right now. And you need to provide that. I hate to say this sounds awful, but in the past, a long time ago, children died all the time. And while the rest of the family grieved, the father kept tending the livestock and planting the fields, and putting food on the table for the family. Fathers didn't come home from bloody wars like World War II and fall apart. I mean, they went to work and supported families when they came back. And your family needs that kind of old school father right now. So put that grief that you have right now in a box and lock it away. Handle your son's affairs so your grieving wife doesn't have to do it. Give your daughter a shoulder to cry on when she needs it, which is going to be a lot. Go to work and keep paying the bills so your household is secure. Be the strong man that your family needs you to be right now. If you fall apart, your family's going to fall apart too. And if you stay strong with your family, eventually this grieving period will subside. It'll never pass, but it will subside. And at that point, you can go back and take that box that you put all your grief in and let it out little by little so you can process what happened. And, maybe that's the time where you want to get some counseling or talk to somebody. But everyone thinks that the main challenge of being a father is raising kids. But what I know, and what you now know, Steve, is that the biggest challenge for a father is guiding your family through a time of crisis. And I sincerely hope that none of you out there have to deal with this. And all I can tell you is best of luck, Stephen. And I will personally check in with you periodically just to see how things are going. Our next letter is from Ben in Wyoming. Ben wrote, I see that you're a proponent of click pawl fly reels and able reels are your favorite. What do you think the cutoff weight is between using a click pawl reel or using a reel with a disc drag? Well, for regular single hand rods, I usually go with the disc drag reel when I go above a 5 weight. And the only reason I'm going to go above a 5 weight in freshwater is if I'm after smaller salmon, or maybe I'm throwing a streamer, and then I want a disc drag for that. But any fish that you'd use a normal 5 weight reel on and down can be stripped in, or the reel can just be palmed if you even need that. But I just love the simplicity, nostalgia, sound, and challenge of using a click pawl reel. They are my favorite for freshwater. And I do love Abel's TR series of click pawl reels, but they aren't my favorite like you think. My favorite click pawl reels are actually the lightweight series from Hardy. Nothing brings you back to the roots of catching trout like a classic Hardy clicker reel. I mean, listen to that sound. This is just perfection made in England. And our next letter is from Greg from Georgia. Greg wrote, in your experience, how much does bullet diameter influence killing power or potential on big game? For example, is there much difference going from a 7mm bullet to a 30 caliber bullet based on diameter alone? Everyone talks about bullet velocity, energy, and penetration, but the effects of bullet diameter are rarely discussed. Can you shed some light on this topic? Yeah, I can shed a little bit of light on it. Since centerfire rifle bullets don't have the profile of a tuna can or a handgun bullet, you have to assume that as you go up in diameter, you're also going to go up in bullet weight. You can achieve kinetic energy through either speed or mass. The 7mm has the speed and the 30 caliber usually has the mass. But they both end up dumping similar energy levels on the animal and usually achieve pretty similar results. You can nitpick that the 7mm has better BC bullets and the .30 caliber leaves a bigger hole, but the difference is negligible for hunting purposes, and no animal is really going to know the difference. A hunting rifle is basically limited on cartridge length, so there's limits on how fast you can move a projectile of any given weight. This means that to get more mass, more diameter is ultimately needed. So when we utilize bigger calibers, what we're really going after is larger mass, not necessarily a bigger hole. Our next letter is from Elliot in Montana. Elliot wrote, I recently moved up to Montana, and this will be my first year hunting in the state and my first year hunting as an adult. Do you have any tips for scouting and or hunting an area you've never hunted before? I've studied all the maps I can get my hands on, and I've talked to a biologist in the area about some spots to start with. I've got a pretty solid plan A, B, and C. One of my hunting partners has friends in the area, and he's gotten some local knowledge that way. I'm confident with my rifle out to 400 yards, and I'm in pretty good shape. Is there anything you think I should do to prepare more for the upcoming season? Well, absolutely. But it does look like you have most of your bases covered here. But what I would do is I would download a program like Onyx Maps to your phone and use that for navigation, to mark spots, and to make sure you're in the correct hunting district and not on private property. Also make sure you have the proper type of clothing for the weather, which can be pretty bad in a lot of parts of Montana. And lastly, you need to know how to quarter and possibly even debone an animal in the field so you can pack out the meat. And you also need some type of backpack system that allows you to do that. And our next letter is from Victor from Southern California. Victor wrote, I love your great informative videos. I also enjoyed your Zimbabwe hunt video. I'm 71 years old and am in good health and decent condition. I am considering hunting in Zimbabwe with the same outfitter you went with. I would appreciate your honest opinion on this hunt for somebody my age in good condition. Well, absolutely do it, Victor. I don't care if you're 71. And Charles McCallum Safaris can cater hunts to most fitness levels, but it is free range hunting, so it won't be as easy as your typical South African hunt. I'd expect at least maybe 5-6 miles a day of walking in the easier areas and up to 20 miles a day on foot in the really challenging areas. But the terrain will also vary from flatland to really hilly territory depending on the area that you hunt in, but all you have to do is ask. But the Zambezi Valley won't be one of those hunts where you drive around in a truck all day and then you see a couple buffalo over there feeding in the fields and you go, okay, let's go get them. And you pop out of the truck and grab your 20-pound rifle and strap a bunch of crap around your hunting belt and you walk 100 yards out into the field and you shoot the damn thing. It doesn't work like that in the Zambezi Valley. You're going to put a lot of time in on foot no matter what. But also, if you're going to that area, the later in the hunting season you go, probably the better. But the Zambezi Valley can be pretty brutal as far as heat goes, and there's absolutely no air conditioning. So if you have any conditions that require you to stay out of the heat, definitely plan your hunt before September. I purposely requested the most challenging hunt that they had and was given the Dandy Easter hunt, which it lived up to that reputation too. But they have several other areas where the degree of physical difficulty is much less, and the hunting is probably easier with a greater likelihood of success as well. But book a trip, Victor, and I really hope I'm still hunting when I'm 71 like you. And our next letter is from Richard. And Richard is a very well-known gunsmith and custom engraver in this industry. And I'm not going to give you his last name or his business name because he didn't give me permission to do that. Richard wrote, "Let me say first that I enjoy your channel immensely because of its candor, logic, reason, and your knowledge and experience of firearms, the firearm trade, hunting, and fishing. As a custom gunsmith, I see many issues that should be addressed, and you do have the very best platform to present this information." And then Richard goes on giving me examples of how a lot of his clients come in with really low quality budget type guns and are dissatisfied with them and want a lot of work done to them, but don't want to spend the money to get it done. And, he concludes the letter basically saying that people shouldn't have blind brand loyalty to a certain type of gun. In this case, in his example, it was a Ruger. But I agree with you 100%, Richard. You just can't have blind brand loyalty in the firearm industry at all. A Weatherby Mark V might be one of the finest factory rifles around, but the piece of shit Turkish shotguns that Weatherby sells are absolute junk. The Winchester Model 70, even the current production, might be the best working man's hunting rifle ever made in history. But Winchester makes some pretty crappy ammunition, don't they? The Vortex AMG might be a high quality optic made in the USA, but most of Vortex's other products are overpriced Chinese junk. So brand loyalty is a complete mistake when it comes to this industry, and they'll always break your heart. When I worked as an apprentice in a big high volume shop, I used to hate it when people would bring in really cheap budget rifles for custom work. I knew I was going to have to quote them 3 times what they paid for that rifle just to do what they wanted done. And I always knew right after I gave them that quote that they were going to get pissed off, accuse us of trying to rip them off, and they were going to leave mad. We had one guy in the shop that brought in a $400 Remington SPS when those came out, and we used to call them Remington POSs in the shop. But it was a Remington SPS, and he wanted it to shoot half MOA, and he paid us to bed that action into a brand new Macmillan stock, put a match barrel on it, a new trigger. We did a Duracoat job on it, and we trued and blueprinted the action. And in the end, he could have just bought a custom rifle that would have shot better for a cheaper price. In this industry, this is known as polishing a turd, and I've polished many turds over the years. And our next letter is from Kenneth. Kenneth wrote, "In Africa, the minimum caliber for dangerous game has long been .375 H&H. This includes the African lion, which according to Craig Boddington, a large male rarely weighs more than 350 pounds. Why do we hunt the large bears in Canada and Alaska with so much smaller calibers? Are lions really that much more dangerous?" Well, the only countries that I'm aware of that require you to use .375 on a lion are Tanzania, Botswana, and Namibia. In Cameroon, you can use I believe it's a 35 caliber. In Zambia, you can use a 30 caliber, and I know in Zimbabwe, you can use a 7mm on a lion. In South Africa, Mozambique, and the rest of the continent, you could pretty much legally shoot a lion with whatever the hell you want. A lion can easily be killed with a 7mm, I think, but the only thing more dangerous than a pissed off cat is a wounded one. And you only get one shot at a lion or a leopard, so you better kill it, or a lot of people are going to be put at risk tracking that animal down. I'd never killed a lion, or actually really wanted to, but the people I know that do kill lions prefer a .338 Win Mag, which just also happens to be popular for bear as well. In general, lions are probably more aggressive and unpredictable than bears are. Our next letter is from Toby from Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, I bet it's hot there right now. Toby wrote, I just found out that they discontinued IMR 4451 powder. I've been loading my 6.5 Creedmoor with this for 2 years and I just ran out. What do you suggest I replace it with? Well, Kenneth, that's an easy one. Replace it with H4350, which has almost the same exact burn rate as the old 4451. Actually, I think H4350 is a better powder anyways, and you'll probably get better results with it. Just make sure that you start load development all over again. Don't substitute your loads with your previous powder for the H4350. And before you try to tell me that you can't find any H4350 anywhere, it's everywhere right now. Basically, the powder shortage is over and has been over for a while. In fact, as of right now today, you can order H4350 straight from the Hodgdon website. Our next letter is from Carl from Texas. Carl wrote, my question is, if you have any experience with the Mauser M12. I have one in 30-06 and I love it, but I never see anything about them online or in hunting magazines. I just wondered why that is. You know, I've never owned an M12, but I have handled a few. And one of the things you have to be mindful of here is that the M12 has a heat-pressed barrel, so you won't be able to change barrels on that. Basically, if you buy an M12, you won't be able to pass it on to your grandkids because you won't be able to change the barrel out. And the M12 is basically a disposable rifle once the barrel goes. You know, I also don't like how you get a long action with a cheesy magazine block when you buy a short action chambering. And when you do get a short action magazine, the length is so short on that you can't properly seat a lot of bullets. And, you know, admittedly, Sauer has these same issues, and I think they're made in the same factory. The M12 also has one of those hook-style extractors, similar to what you see in a Savage, which I'm just not a huge fan of, and it's among one of the weaker designs. And your M12 chambered in 30-06 has that stupid 1 in 11 twist rate, which isn't really good for heavier, longer bullets, which I often shoot in my 30-06. But I'm glad you like your M12, but I think you'd get much more from a cheaper Weatherby Vanguard or Browning X-Bolt than you would from an M12. You know, and at the price of an M12, there's true controlled round feed rifles out there that are even more awesome. But I do like the 3-position safety and the trigger on the M12, but that's pretty much it. And our last question is from Brian in Florida. Brian wrote, how do you think these record high temperatures are going to affect hunting and fishing? Well, remember when I warned you a couple of camp mails ago that this year's El Nino was going to be epic? Remember when I warned you that it's going to be really hot and wet this summer? Well, you shouldn't be surprised that it's happening now. This is an epic El Nino that we're in the middle of. For fishing, warm El Nino water is making this saltwater fishing season a record year. You know, El Nino always brings fish from the tropics north up into the United States, which we like. But freshwater fishing is often a different story entirely. In some of the northern trout waters, especially the freestone rivers, they'll get so hot that the trout will be under a lot of stress in that hot water. And as fishermen, we have to back off of the fish in those impacted waters and just kind of let them be until the water cools down again. As far as hunting goes, El Nino tends to bring a mixed bag for hunting. If you live in an area where the El Nino brings a lot of moisture, then the hunting's going to be great. But if you live in an area where El Nino brings a lot of drought, hunting will probably suffer. But The hotter temperatures in general mean that animals probably won't be very active during the daylight hours much. And really your only shots might be right at sun up and sun down. So that's how El Nino generally affects hunting and fishing. Well, that's it for this month's mail. Here's some memes for the month of July. I also want to thank Alan in Tennessee for his Southern Turkey Bites recipe, and Mitch from Canada for the dirty hunting jokes. Those were great. And to Captain John, save some bonefish and permit for me. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Sean from Montana also recommended another episode of Movie Night, and I'll try to put another one of those together this summer for you guys. I took a break from hunting and gun related content in July because that's usually when I do a lot of hiking and fishing and backpacking in the Sierras. But the gun related content that you know and love will be back next month. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to hit that notification button. That way you can bypass the shadow ban on my channel and get notified when I post a video up. You can reach me with any questions or comments at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. As always, thank you for watching and good hunting.